Hello. My name is Ben Hecht, and I am the president and CEO of Living Cities. And we are a collaborative of 18 of the world's largest foundations and financial institutions who work at the intersection of cities, low-income people, and economic opportunity. So I want to start today asking you one question. What do these three things have in common? Donald Trump, Black Lives Matter, and Brexit. What they have in common is in part frustration, a deep frustration in the fact that there are millions of people who feel like they've been shut out of economic opportunities for decades. And the reality is, it's true. Because across an array of indicators, over the last 40 years, life has actually gotten much worse for a lot of people. Just take two of them, income and wealth. From the 40s to the 70s, almost every American's income doubled. But since the 70s to today, one part of the population has continued to double, and that's those at the top 1/10 of 1%. Everyone else substantially hasn't had a raise or wealth. From the 40s to the 70s, we had a great democratization of wealth. The top 1/10 of 1% of the population had about 7% of the wealth. Today, they have about 22% of the wealth. But even more extreme is when you look at people of color. And by 2050, as we know, we will be a nation, a majority non-white nation. And when you look at the disparities there, a black person earns 59 cents, a Latino 72 cents to the dollar that a white person earns. Or wealth. White families have more than 10 times the wealth of people of color. Only 20 years ago, that was 2 times. The difference was only 2 times. So, over the last 6 years, we have been working on and watching how can government and technology be harnessed in order to help to address these disparities. And so I wanted to highlight 6 things we've learned over those years that hopefully will be useful for you all. Number 1 is, if you build it, they won't necessarily come. So whether you're trying to help people get a job or keep a job, whether you're trying to help people grow or build a business, whether you're trying to help people supplement their income with food stamps or rental assistance, just because you want to help them, unless you really understand how the user lives, what the user needs, all your help will go for naught. So this is a picture of Albuquerque with the mayor in the middle. So Albuquerque is already a majority non-white city. And what they want to do is help immigrants to grow and build businesses. They aggregated an amazing amount of resources, and guess what? No one used it. And so what they thought of something extraordinary, let's go talk to people. And so the mayor, which is what this picture is, met 7 times these deep dives with entrepreneurs, more than 70 immigrant entrepreneurs, to ask them, so what is it that really is the barrier to doing this, which has resulted in a real focus on the early stage of the startup. Lesson 1. Lesson 2, less is more. So it's not really that there isn't information out there for people. In fact, more often than not, there is either there's good information that's surrounded by a lot of noise, or more commonly, the information actually isn't advice. So it's neutral. This is where you go for X, but not, well, if you go there, how can you get the best advice? So Baltimore wanted to help folks that were returning to society from jail and prison. And so they talked to folks that have experienced that. And what they found was, yes, they don't have good information, but more importantly, the information they want is from word of mouth. Not just you go to Department of Employment Services to get help, but you go visit Mary Jane when you go to that department because she treats you with respect and helps you. And so when they built Here for Reentry in Baltimore, they put in information, but they actually got word of mouth by crowdsourcing people who've been through the system, so that's what they could share with people. Lesson 3, meet people where they are. What that oftentimes means is you have to really understand what the barriers are to people to try to reach economic success. And I will tell you, if you're anything like me, I don't know what those are. They are not necessarily intuitive if you haven't been through it. So probation is a great example. It's oftentimes hard to get a job coming out of jail or prison, but if you get the job, it's actually oftentimes even harder to keep it because you have to be able to report to your probation officer. You sometimes have to go back to court for appointments. And if you don't meet those appointments, you can often get rearrested and even reincarcerated. So Salt Lake County and Code for America actually built a text message tool because they found out that 95% of the folks leaving prison and jail have phones. And so now they can text message with their parole officers, sometimes not having to leave work to visit. But they can also get texts to make sure they know when their next court appointment or other appointment is. The next one is people live horizontally, but government actually works vertically, and we have to change that. What does that mean? It means if you want to start a business, you shouldn't actually have to care. That the way the city works is there's one folks that do taxation, there's another folks that do land use, and even another bunch of folks who tell you what you need to do to treat your employees right. If you're the entrepreneur, why should you care that there's 3 different agencies? The government should be the one who does the navigating, not the citizen. So the I-teams in Los Angeles built business.lacity.org to be the single point of entry to the entrepreneurial ecosystem in LA. Whether you're planning, launching, managing, or growing, you go there and they get you what you need regardless of what the name of the agency is. 2 more lessons. One is getting there actually oftentimes is more than half the battle. Given the sprawl that we see almost everywhere in this country, even if you get a job, being able to get there and back turns out to be a huge obstacle, both cost and time. And so more often today, we're seeing incredibly innovative strategies where people are integrating shared mobility strategies, whether it's the rail and the bus and the car share and the bike share and the van share, as well as integrating payment methods. So you don't need a different ticket and a different way to pay for each of those modalities. So in Kansas City, the Kansas City Transit Authority got together with a technology transportation company, Bridge, and Ford Motor Company, who makes vans. And they created a special service, a microtransit, where essentially creating van routes based on places that have demand but very little permanent service. They launched it in March, and by June, they've already expanded it based on 100 requests from downtown out to the suburbs where the jobs are or the housing is as a response to demand. And finally, what we've seen is that the hope that broadband would be ubiquitous for everyone is still a dream. And what we know is that at a minimum, 25% of Americans only get broadband on their smartphone. For low-income people, that's probably 50 to 60%. Why does that matter? Well, it's really hard to look for a job on a smartphone, but it's almost impossible to work remotely on it or to actually run your business on it. If your only access is not, if you don't have access at home, you don't have access in your business, you're restricted dramatically. So cities are taking and have been taking action on that, from places like Chattanooga, where the publicly owned electric company built their own network and today is the #1 provider in the region, as well as to small businesses and students at affordable rates, all the way down to New York, where they are going to have 7,500 of these Link NYC stations in 5 years, where people will be able to go, get free Wi-Fi, get access to city services, and even make phone calls. So what we've seen is that government and technology really can play an oversized role in attacking the economic disparities that have really given power to Trump and Black Lives Matter and Brexit. But we've also learned that what you do, how you do it, and how well you understand how the user lives and what they need is going to be the difference between your success and your impact and the long-term economic well-being of Americans across the country. Thank you.